Ever wonder how Stone Island started?
Right, everybody out when we get up to the lights for us.
No, that's not actually how they started, but English football hooligan culture did play a huge role in spreading the brand. How exactly? Well, we'll get to that a bit later. Stone Island is actually an Italian brand, despite the fact that it's looked at by many as being quintessentially British. I know that was terrible. But over the years, the brand has also blown up over here in the States thanks to collabs with Supreme and Nike. But how did they actually get their start? Let's find out. I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com, and this is the history of Stone Island. But before we get started, consider hitting that like button for me. We're a small channel and YouTube loves it when viewers like you guys like videos. It helps them suggest us to more people, which in turn helps us to continue to grow. But with that being said, let's jump right in. Stone Island was founded in 1982 in the northern Italian town of Ravarino, the brainchild of Massimo Osti, a revolutionary fashion designer and garment engineer from Bologna. Named after the nautical novels of Joseph Conrad, it was conceived with a deep philosophy of research, experimentation, and function. When created, it was originally meant to be a supplement brand for Massimo's main endeavor, the CP company. But why would he do this? Turns out, one day, Massimo had a brilliant idea of a new fabric named Tela Stella. The material was heavy, oilskin-like, and had different colors. He couldn't quite make it fit with the CP company collections, but he was so inspired by the idea, he decided to make several jackets on a trial run with military and maritime concepts. And in 1983, Carlo Ravetti acquired 50% of the brand through his family business, GFT, and from there, the team was set. The 80s were the years that the foundation and consolidation of Stone Island's aesthetics. The collections expressed cutting-edge garments solidly based on real, true functionality. The results were, well, success. Italian kids loved the inventions, and throughout the 80s, Stone Island became a staple of high-end Italian fashion. The story of how Stone Island made their way to the UK, though, she's a fun one, to say the least. To explain that, first I got to explain what an English football hooligan is. Now, for all of my viewers here stateside, if you didn't know, the Brits love their soccer, and in fact, most of the world does. And don't let them hear you call it soccer because they get right pissed, mate. I know my English accent is terrible. I promise I won't do it again. But in the 80s and the early 90s, it was a trend for groups of violent fans to gang up and show a bit of hospitality to the opposing team's fan base. So in the 80s, the British soccer teams began winning a bit more in the European tournaments, which meant crowds of die-hard young fans were regularly traveling to exotic European destinations to cheer on their favorite football teams. While there, they took note of the stuff that people in those countries were into, discovering rare brands that hadn't made their way back to England yet. High-end continental sportswear brands like Stone Island, Fila, and Lacoste became hugely popular. The earliest Stone Island fans were style-conscious 80s Milan kids known as Paninaro, who took their name from the panini bars they hung around in Milan. Their style was inspired by a strange mix of 50s Americana and 60s mod, complemented with sporty Italian designer labels. It was this look that the die-hard British supporters brought back to the UK, appropriating and building their own subculture around it. It became known as the terrace casuals movement. Terrace because that's what they call their soccer fields. Legend has it that Stone Island became one of the hottest brands in the terrace casual style in 1992. After England was eliminated from the group stages of the European Championship in Sweden, the fans apparently looted a Swedish clothing store called Genius and brought back a gang of stolen Stone Island merch, which they were calling Stony, back home with them. Stone Island became part of the unofficial uniform for football hooligans all over England, and even made cameos in the movie Green Street Hooligans, which chronicled the football hooligan culture. Its minimalistic and functional look resonated with the English landscape's washed out colors, and its state-of-the-art thermic properties were the right choice to confront the harsh climate. The firm passed from hooligans to middle-class workers, extending its influence to the rock scene as well. Groups like The Farm and Happy Mondays adopted the brand. The jacket also became a must-have in Liam Gallagher's wardrobe, leader of Oasis. And while capturing the British indie rock scene, Stone Island's coats were also popular in England's urban music scene, becoming a flagship for the grime genre movement. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, Stone Island languished as a European thing. But in 2014, when they collaborated with American streetwear giant Supreme, it catapulted the brand's popularity across the pond and into the mainstream. Drake began to wear the brand, granting it new visibility in the American pop and rap culture, and even generated a dispute over who introduced it to the hip-hop world first. Instead of aiming to sell products to new markets and audiences, Stone Island's approach is pursuing the idea of design. Where most brands were challenging each other to find a new definition of coolness, Stone Island began its race alone, centering its development around the idea that male clothing must be functional first and foremost. Way back in the beginning, the collection that started the brand was made up of only 7 pieces, but it was a smash hit, and this became the cornerstone of Stone Island's history. In the early 90s, Asti had left and Carlo Ravetti began to search for a successor. While visiting a fair in Frankfurt, he discovered a small brand named Sabotage, designed by Paul Harvey. Paul was a fashion designer with a degree in textile design, but he was currently employed as a trucker. Harvey was eager to experiment with the oddball idea, seemingly a great choice to fill Asti's empty seat. Under his wing, Stone Island sought to revolutionize fashion with projects like dyeing Kevlar, a military fiber deemed impossible to color, or Pure Metal Shell, a coat made of nylon covered with 100% stainless steel mesh. The will to affirm itself as a forward-looking business has led Stone Island to develop exclusive fabrics in its laboratories, like nylon metal and tank shield, creating the shape of future clothing far from fashion's runways. This kind of approach has led to the conception of Shadow Island, an experimental line born in 2008 to thread the line between innovative grounds with products not centered on profit, but experimentation rather. Earlson Hugh, the project's head, was also the co-founder of Icecream brand and previously worked with Sabotage. And following in Paul Harvey's footsteps, Hugh began his collaboration with Stone Island, designing a line that gave a new spin to the interplay between form and function that molded the brand's core. The concept beneath Shadow Island is to work on ideas that can't really be elaborated elsewhere due to the extreme attention to detail required in their execution. And in 2020, Stone Island was officially bought out by the Moncler Group. Throughout its history, Stone Island has served as a signifier for many different things: a practice of material experimentation, a subculture of diehard football supporters, and a high-end luxury Italian fashion label. Its universal approach and ability to adapt with the culture is what sets it apart as one of the most coveted fashion brands across the world. Both technically and culturally, Stone Island is driven by constant evolution. All in all, if you want something simple yet experimental, ordinary yet striking, practical yet fashionable, Stone Island is where you find it. Unlike many others, their tops and tees are mainly dyed in solid colors without a big logo printed all over them. It gives them a simplistic look, but the colors and shades in the wash makes it unique. The detailing is done with a concentration on practicalities, while the luxury comes from establishment of new standards and boundaries. But what do you think? Are you a fan of Stone Island? Hit us up in the comment section and let us know. And if you made it this far, then we have to assume that you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please smash that like button for me. Liking and sharing the video is the best way to help us to continue to grow as a channel. And if you want to be updated every time we drop a new episode, then hit the subscribe button and then the notification bell. That way you will be dinged whenever a new video drops. But with that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out until next time.